What is up, YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 things the UFC needs to do in 2026. I broke down a list of things that are going to be extremely beneficial for them. In my opinion, um, these are just the 5 major things that they need to do. Number one, we need more promotion. The UFC has been lacking in promotion for years now, and a lot of people think it's because of them trying to move away from pay per view. And now that they have gone over to Paramount, I hope Paramount does give us more promotion and better promotion. The UFC used to have such great promotion, like the Aldo versus Connor fight, or anytime Francis was going to fight, they would promote him insane. Anytime Connor fought anyone, his promotion was amazing. They used to promote their biggest stars very well and a lot. And now they've been pretty lackluster with some of their biggest stars like Sean O'Malley, Rob Dvalishvili, um, Islam. Who else? Ilya. Volk. Volk is one of the best fighters in the UFC in UFC history, and they haven't really been promoting him as much. And they've been giving him fights that really don't, like the Diego Lopez rematch doesn't benefit his legacy. They're not promoting their fighters like they should. And now I do think a lot of it is up to fighters to promote themselves and give themselves promotional value, but it's also up to the company to promote them in a way that benefits both of them. The UFC isn't really anything without their fighters, and the fighters aren't anything without the UFC. It's a relationship that needs promotion value from both sides. Next, I think the UFC needs more PIs. We have one in Las Vegas, but I think there should be more. Where do a lot of UFC fighters come from in America? California, New York, and Florida. That's where a lot of training camps are held. I think there should be a PI in all 3 of those states. There should also be a PI in Canada. Who's the greatest UFC fighter to ever come out of Canada? GSP. And he's regarded as a lot of people's number one of all time. People put him above John Jones. People put him above Demetrius Johnson. So why not have a PI in Canada? Also, where do a lot of champions come from? Brazil. We've had a plethora of top Brazilian contenders and top Brazilian champions. Why don't we have a UFC PI in Brazil? The UFC has funded so much money into having a PI in Mexico, and we've only had 2 Mexican champions, Alexa Grasso and Brandon Moreno. Why don't we stop trying to fund Mexican champions? Because Mexicans only care about boxing when it comes to combat sports. Yair Rodriguez was an interim champion. Diego Lopez is a Brazilian man who represents Mexico. Yet we keep trying to push for Mexican champions, and Mexicans just don't seem to be interested. They seem to be interested in 2 things, soccer and boxing when it comes to sports, not mixed martial arts. Hey, knock it off. Sorry, my cat's over here bugging. Next, I'm pretty sure this is UK. Why don't we have one in UK? UK has a lot of up-and-coming contenders, especially, why don't we have one in Ireland? Conor McGregor came out of Ireland, and he's the most popular UFC fighter of all time. Then there's Ian Gary. He's a title contender from Ireland. There's like 4 more Irish contenders on the come up. Why don't we have a PI in Ireland? Why don't we have one in the UK? Tom Aspinall. He has his heavyweight gym. It'd be awesome to have them all, training at a UK PI. I think this one here, Spain. Why don't we have a PI in Spain? Ilia Topuria is an amazing fighter, and he represents Spain and Georgia. But in the Spanish market, it's such a big market to have. If they open up to the Spaniard market over in Spain, that could do amazing things for the UFC. Next, I have 2 in Africa. I think this is down here, South Africa, and this one can just be really anywhere. Africa has always really provided us great fighters. Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, Dricus du Plessis. Amazing African fighters. And I think we should put a PI in Africa. And there's Atebe, I don't know, the middleweight Francis Ngannou. Atebe is part of his name. He's from Africa. We should have an African market. This is a huge continent with a lot of countries inside the continent that could provide a lot of great talent. Next, Australia. We need a PI in Australia. Volkanovski's from Australia. Who else is from Australia? I don't know. But a lot of people go here to train with Volk and train under Volk's coaches. We could probably put one in New Zealand too. But there should be a PI in Australia. Australia has a very big mixed martial arts market and a very big fan base around the sport. So if they opened a public PI where people could go in and train under Volk, train under with Salkild, with all these Australian fighters, and learn, it would just be amazing. I don't think we need one in Russia because a lot of the Russian fighters typically train with Khabib under Khabib's gym, so there really shouldn't. There's no need for one in Russia, but you could probably put one over in China or Japan because UFC has been wanting to tap into the Japanese market forever. I don't think we've had a Japanese champion. We've had Zhang Weili as a Chinese champion, but we haven't had a Chinese male champion yet. They want to tap into the Chinese and Japanese market, so why not put one in China or Japan? Next, I know that was a long one. Next, we need rule changes. We need active rule changes to fouls. We need point deduction for fouls, and we need to push for more active fighters. But that needs to be a rule. Is you need to at least, if you're not held back by injury, you need to have an attendance. You need to fight this many times a year, or else you drop in the rankings, or your contract gets cut. I think it's ridiculous that we have fighters who don't fight for 2 years or 3 years, and they're just still ranked. That's another thing here is push for more fights to the top one. Oh wait, no, I have somewhere. I have another rule. I think this is we need to stop the stalling on cage side or in middle octagon floor. I see countless fights where they're just like the Hamzat Dreykus fight. Hamzat was not making any. I love wrestling. I'm a wrestler. Hamzat wasn't pushing for anything half the time on the floor. Islam wasn't pushing for anything against JDM half the time on the floor. There should be stalling point deductions or stalling warnings to get them back up. And like John Almeida, he was stalling a lot. And the ref would stand him back up and he would shoot again and do nothing. That should be a point deduction. You should get warnings for that and point deductions for that. If I stand you up because you're not doing anything and you just shoot to do it again, that's a point deduction. Action. There should be constant push for action in the cage. Next, I think WMMA. I've been saying this for a while. I've gotten some mixed opinions on it, but I think WMMA should have time shifts. Everyone knows how boring it is to watch a 15-minute or 25-minute women's MMA fight that doesn't have a lot of action. It's just kind of boring. Nothing really happens. Why not make a 3-round MMA fight 3-minute rounds? 3-minute rounds? It pushes, a shorter time because not a lot of action's going on, so why have, 15 minutes? Push for 3-minute rounds. And then have 5 3-minute rounds. Make women MMA rounds 3 minutes. That might actually push for more action because you have less time to work. Push for more fights from top 1 to 5 contenders and champs. I'm tired of seeing contenders who are in the top 5 and they just sit. Paddy Pimblett hasn't fought since his Chandler fight, and he somehow managed to become a top 5 contender. When his last 3, I think, are Bobby Green, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler. And the gap between those 3 fights is pretty massive. Champs. There are champs who fight once a year, if not every other year. In fact, actually, to go back to contenders, Movsar Evloev. People are saying he's the number 1 contender. I would love to see him fight Volk because I know what Volk can do against Dagestani wrestling because we saw it against Islam. Movsar has fought twice since beating Diego Lopez, whereas Diego Lopez has fought 6 times, I think 7 times, and fought for a title. Movsar just sits on his ass and he sits at the number 1 contender spot. Arman Sarukian, number 1 contender, absolutely. But he sat on his ass after pulling out of his title shot and demanded another title shot without doing anything until the UFC forced him to fight Dan Hooker. And even then he went to, round 3 with Dan? It's fucking bullshit. We need to push for more fights. There are contenders who go and get to, the top 5 and they just sit. They just sit and expect. They don't push for anything. They don't chase anything. There are champs who just kind of sit. They don't really do much. They just kind of get the title. A year later, they're defending. A year later, they're defending. A year later, they're defending. And I get there's injuries and I get there's pushbacks, especially with a lot of foreign fighters. There's visa issues. But the UFC should be making it as easy as possible for them to get in the cage and defend their title or defend their rank or move up the ranks. The UFC should be helping them with visa issues or giving them better recovery options. Like I said, this is a relationship. The UFC is nothing without their fighters, and the fighters are nothing without the UFC. It's a relationship. And I don't want to say the fighters aren't really nothing without the UFC because there's other fight organizations. The UFC is the most prestigious fight org that gives them the biggest opportunity to change their lives. Next, I think fighters should have sponsors. I know this is 3 pictures of the octagon, but there are lower level contenders and even higher level contenders that fight 1 to 2, sometimes 3, sometimes even more than 3 times a year, and they're making 5 for 5, 10 for 10, very rarely 15 for 15, and then the higher ones make 30 for 30, 50 for 50, plus bonuses and all that. They're not making an insane living. Some of them still have to work part-time jobs. Some of them still have to do stuff outside the UFC. And some of them don't even make it to the top of the UFC. And they just have to retire and still work. They can't retire off what they made from the UFC. And that's because they're not making money to sustain themselves. Because the UFC took away fight sponsors. I think we should bring fight sponsors back. Fighters should be able to be sponsored. And Dana said, he said he doesn't like fighter shorts looking like NASCARs. That's why I put up the octagon. Look at all this shit. Monster, Bud Light, UFC 2, MGM Grand. I can't really see a lot of these. But look at all these sponsors. And even now, it's so much more. You can pay to get your name on the octagon, on the canvas. You can, and then you have like OnlyFans everywhere, crypto everywhere, dude wipes. Like the octagon is completely covered. UFC 5. There's probably gonna be Paramount movie or Paramount exclusives now being sponsored on the octagon. It's ridiculous that Dana said, I don't like UFC fighter shorts looking like NASCAR cars, and he's doing this with the octagon. Bring back, and I'm not saying take away the Venom deal because I like the Venom deal. The Venom shorts are really nice. Why can't Venom sponsor every fighter in making their custom shorts? But the UFC fighters also get to rep their personal sponsors. Like, say, Tom Aspinall. He's sponsored by Champion. Why can't he have a Champion logo on his shorts? I know they're made by Venom. There's going to be the Venom on it, on the waistband it says Venom. It's going to be the Venom logo. There should be also a C, maybe, somewhere on his thigh. There should be, maybe, I don't know, let's say, Justin Gaethje. He's not a champion, but he's sponsored by Onyx, his coach's brand. There should be an ONX on his thigh or on the edge of his short or somewhere on his short. There should be people that you should have sponsors being represented on you. Or even if you don't want to represent them on your shorts, still allow them to be sponsored. I think it allows fighters to earn a little bit more money and it allows them to build their brand, which then makes them bigger stars, which leads back to promotion. Next, we need better ranked matchups. We see fighters who sit on a ranking for years without fighting. Usman, he managed to stay in the top 10 without fighting for 3 years. Stipe, he managed to stay within the top 10 without fighting in 4 years. I don't understand this. Then you see high-ranked fighters fighting lower-ranked guys. Like Joshua Van was number 12 ranked, fighting Brandon Royval number 1. Piotr Jan, or no, was it Piotr Jan? I think it might have been Piotr Jan. Top 5 ranked, fighting number 13 ranked Marcus McGee. Like, we see these higher ranked guys fighting, top 15 guys. Why aren't they fighting top 10 guys? Why aren't they fighting guys in their own rankings? I know, it's kind of how rankings shift, but why are we giving such low ranked guys such big jumps? Especially the Van. Like, I love Joshua Van. He's a cool fighter. He's a cool dude. But he was number 12. Why would he fight number 1? When you have Manal Ka, you have Tatsuro Taira in the top 5 that, are building for title shots. It's just crazy to see. And Usman, he just got another win after 3 years, but he should not have been in the top 10. Stipe hadn't fought in 4 years. Why was he in top 10? It's just they sit on these rankings for so long. Mavzar, he hasn't fought since his Aljamain fight over a year ago. And he's the number 1 contender. I don't, like, how? And now he's going to fight Lerone Murphy, I think is what's being rumored. It makes no sense for these fighters to sit on such rankings for so long with being so inactive. It's crazy to me. I think we need to push for more ranked fights. We need to keep contenders contending. And there's this notion where once a fighter gets into the top 5, they sit and they wait for the title to come to them rather than them working for that title. Like Mavzar, he's been sitting waiting for the title to come to him rather than fighting and earning his title shot. Diego Lopez has earned 2 title shots since he lost to Mavzar. 2. Mavzar hasn't earned a single one because he sits on his ass. He doesn't do shit. And yet he talks about he wants to fight for a title. He should be next. You beat Aljamain Sterling. That's a great win. But when was that? Over a year ago. Like, it's crazy that these fighters just don't really work. They don't, or I don't want to say that because they put in a lot of work and a lot of dedication to be here. I have all respect to these fighters. I have 100% of respect to these fighters. But we need contenders to contend. You guys need, if you're in the top 5, you need to earn your top 5 spot. And you need to constantly prove that you should be there. Rather than, or even if you're in the top 10. Like, you shouldn't be able to sit out for 3 years and still maintain a top 10 spot. That makes no sense. You have young up-and-coming contenders who are battling it out on an Apex prelim, chasing their dream to be in the top 10, or even in the top 5, or even contender, title contention. And yet you have a guy who's been sitting out for 3 years, Kamaru Usman, Stipe Miocic, just chilling in top 10, not doing anything, not doing shit. When, you could make room for new guys. It's ridiculous to me. Yeah, that's my top 5 things the UFC should push for and do and make changes for in 2026. And I know they can do this shit. They just got $7 billion from Paramount. They have money. And I know there's going to be people saying it's expensive, they can't afford this. Yes, they can. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They have $7 billion that they just got from Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus in itself is a multi-billion. If they can push out $7 billion to buy the UFC, or like have the UFC's, whatever, they have billions of dollars that they're sitting on. These are $2 billion companies, multi-billion dollar companies probably. They shouldn't be fucking cheaping out on this shit. They should be having more money pushed to make their sport better and make the promotion better. It's ridiculous to me. But yeah, that's my video. Like and subscribe, comment, tell me what y'all think, tell me if y'all agree, tell me what y'all wish that they would push for in 2026. Yeah, just give me your thoughts, man. Goodbye.